Greetings, this is the Grumpy Old Slan, and today we're going to look at 4th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana. So as we can see, there are 32 4th level magic user spells, of which 8 are new, and those are the ones we're going to be taking a look at. The first spell is this spell, Illusion. It has a range of half an inch per level, a casting time of 4 segments, and it has a permanent duration. This spell is similar to the 3rd level illusionist spell of the same name. A magic user attempting to dispel an illusion is considered at 2 levels below his actual level with respect to illusion phantasm spells cast by an illusionist. So the problem I have with this spell is that this spell magic, which works in a similar way but isn't limited to illusion phantasm spells, is a 3rd level spell. When this spell was introduced, it could actually cause problems for a game master who had previously ruled that dispel magic would affect illusions and phantasm type spells. And I don't see why it shouldn't, because it is a form of magic. Also, a reminder that clerics in AD&D have dispel magic. Magic users have dispel magic. The two, even though the source of the power is arcane for one and divine for the other, are related closely enough that one can negate the other. I'm not sure I like this spell all that much. Next, we have Everard's Black Tentacles. Has a range of 3 inches, a duration of 1 round per level, and the area of effect is 30 square feet per level of the caster. By means of this spell, the caster creates many rubbery black tentacles in the area of effect of the Dwemer. These waving members seem to spring forth from the earth, floor, or whatever surface is underfoot, including water. Each tentacle is 10 feet long, AC 10, and takes as many hit points of damage to destroy as the magic user who casts the spell has levels of experience. Furthermore, there will be one such tentacle for each of the levels of experience of the spellcaster. Any creature within range of the writhing tentacle is subject to attack. If more than one target is within range of a tentacle, the probability of attack on each is determined and the result found by die roll. A victim of a tentacle attack must make a saving throw versus spell. If this succeeds, the victim takes 1 to 4 hit points of damage from the initial contact with the tentacle, and it then is destroyed. Failure to save indicates that the damage inflicted will be 2 to 8 points. The ebon member is wrapped around its victim, and damage will be 3 to 18 points on the second and succeeding rounds. Since these tentacles have no intelligence to guide them, there is the possibility that they will entwine any object, a tree, post, pillar, or continue to squeeze a dead opponent. Once grasped, a tentacle remains wrapped around its chosen target until the tentacle is destroyed by some form of attack or it disappears due to the expiration of the Dwemer's duration. The component of this spell is a piece of tentacle from a giant octopus or giant squid. I quite like this spell. It has some interesting possibilities for a clever player. You do have to watch out for potential damage to your allies if you're not careful about the area of effect you target. The other thing to keep in mind is that on average, one tentacle will be in a 30-foot square area since you get one tentacle per level and the area of effect is 30 square feet per level. As a reminder, 30 square feet is about 5 by 6 feet, so every area that's about this size will have one tentacle. And it will obviously be able to reach everything within that area. It's also possible for 2 tentacles to reach for the same victim if there aren't that many in the targeted area. As I mentioned before, I quite like this spell. Next is Leomund's Secure Shelter. It has a range of 2 inches, a duration of 6 turns per level, and a casting time of 4 turns. The area of effect is 30 square feet per level of the caster. This spell enables the magic user to magically call into being a sturdy cottage or lodge made of material which is common in the area where the spell is cast: stone, timber, or at worst, sod. The floor area of the lodging will be 30 square feet per level of the spellcaster, and the surface will be level, clean, and dry. In all respects, the lodging will resemble a normal cottage with a sturdy door, 2 or more shuttered windows, and a small fireplace. While the lodging will be secure against winds of up to 70 miles per hour, it has no heating or cooling source other than natural insulation qualities. Therefore, it must be heated as a normal dwelling, and extreme heat will certainly affect it and its occupants adversely. The dwelling does, however, provide considerable security otherwise, as it will be as strong as a normal stone building regardless of its material composition, will resist flames and fire as if it were stone, and will be generally impervious to normal missiles, but not the sort cast by siege machinery or giants. The door, shutters, and even chimney are secure against intrusion, the two former being wizard locked and the latter being secured by a top grade of iron and a narrow flue. In addition, these three areas are protected by an alarm spell. Lastly, an unseen servant is called up to provide service to the spellcaster. The inside of a Leomund's secure shelter will contain crude furnishings as desired by the spellcaster. Up to 8 bunks, a trestle table and benches, as many as 4 chairs or 8 stools, and a writing desk. The material component of this spell are a square chip of stone, crushed lime, a few grains of sand, a sprinkling of water, and several splinters of wood. These must be augmented by the components of the alarm and unseen servant spells if these are to be included in the spell, i.e. string and silver wire and a small bell. Leomund's shelter making its first appearance here, stronger than the tiny hut that has been so overblown in later editions, in my opinion. I quite like this spell. I would rule that the unseen servant cannot leave the location of the shelter since it's tied to it. It can also be assumed that it will not resist very violent natural events like an avalanche or anything like that. Even using non-magical means, it would be possible to destroy the shelter and seriously harm, if not outright kill, whoever's in it. But that doesn't mean this is useless. It would still require quite a bit of effort and or use of powerful magic to get into this shelter. And the fairly long casting time of 4 turns means this is not a shelter you can just throw up in order to hide from somebody. This is something that really is meant to help the party rest in a secure location, but not when there's impending danger, which helps balance out the spell with the rest of the game. Next is Magic Mirror, which has a range of touch, a duration of 1 round per level, and a casting time of 1 hour. By means of this spell, the magic user changes a normal mirror into a scrying device similar to a crystal ball. The details of the use of such a scrying device are found on page 101 of the DMG under the description for the crystal ball. The mirror used must be of finely wrought and highly polished silver of a minimum cost of 1,000 gold pieces. This mirror is not harmed by casting of the spell, as are the other material components, the eye of a hawk, an eagle, or even a rock, and nitric acid, copper, and zinc. Cf. 5th level cleric spell magic font, and 2nd level druid spell reflecting pool. The following spells can be cast through a magic mirror: comprehend languages, read magic, tongues, infravision, and ultravision. The following spells have a 5% chance per level of the caster of operating correctly if cast through the magic mirror: detect magic, detect good and evil, message, and detect illusion. There's a chance of the target realizing he or she is being watched. The base chance for a target to detect any crystal ball-like spell is listed in the crystal ball item description with the following additions. A cavalier has a base 5% chance of detecting scrying, and a barbarian has a base 1% chance. Another divination spell. I find it's interesting that the equivalent cleric spell is 5th level, while the druid spell is 2nd level. They all have their unique properties and mechanics, so not exactly the same, so the different levels do make some sense. The last few sentences in this description really should have been in the DM's section of the book. It might be okay to tell the player there is a chance your target will realize he or she is being watched, but knowing what the chances are shouldn't be part of this. A potentially very useful spell in many campaigns. Next is Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. It has a range of 2 inches, a duration of 1 round per level, a casting time of 4 segments, and the area of effect is a 1-foot diameter sphere per level of the caster. When this spell is cast, the result is a globe of shimmering force which encapsulates the subject creature. If it is small enough to fit within the diameter of the sphere, and it fails to successfully save versus spell, the resilient sphere will contain its subject for as long as its dwemer persists, and it is not subject to damage of any sort except from a rod of cancellation, a wand of negation, or a disintegrate or dispel magic spell. These will cause it to be destroyed without harm to the subject. Nothing can pass through the sphere, inside or out, and the target can breathe normally. The subject may struggle, but all that will occur is a movement of the sphere. The globe can be physically moved either by people outside the globe or by the struggles of those within. The material component of the spell are a hemispherical piece of diamond or similar hard, clear gem material and a matching hemispherical piece of gum arabic. So that's an interesting spell. While the obvious use is to trap, at least temporarily, your opponents, it could also be used defensively. If you cast the spell on yourself or allies, I would rule that you can willingly fail the save, so let the spell affect you. While you can't attack or do anything like that, it could allow you to move the sphere to another location, perhaps across an area that is fairly dangerous for one reason or another. You could target a wounded ally and a cleric, and this would allow the cleric to do some healing, perhaps do some other things, since there's at least 9 minutes of security. So several spells could be cast. It's worth noting that nothing can pass through the sphere, inside or out. Does this include sound or anything like that? It'll be for the DM to decide here. I will, however, note that as far as I'm concerned, magic is one of the things that cannot pass through the sphere. You cannot cast magic missile out of it, so you can't use it for that, but it would allow you to do some divination or information spells, or maybe cast some spells on yourself or allies, a strength spell, an enlarge spell, anything like that on yourself can be cast, and then the magic user can at will dismiss the sphere. I like this spell. It has a lot of possibilities with the right players. Next is Shout. It has a casting time of 1 segment and an instantaneous duration, and the area of effect is a 1 inch by 3 inch cone. When a shout spell is cast, the magic user empowers himself or herself with tremendous vocal powers. Via the dwemer of the spell, the caster releases an ear-splitting noise which has a principal effect in a cone shape radiating from the mouth of the caster to a 3-inch terminus. Any creature within this area will be deafened for 2 to 12 rounds and take a like amount, 2 to 12 points, of damage, unless a saving throw is made. Any exposed brittle or similar substance subject to sonic vibrations will be shattered by a shout, i.e. a wall of ice. A spell of this nature can be employed but once per day, for otherwise the caster might permanently deafen himself or herself. The material components for casting the shout spell are a drop of honey, a drop of citric acid, and a small cone made from a bull's or ram's horn. Again, another interesting spell. I'm not sure if it's worth it being fort leveled, although I could see there are some pretty destructive effects that could be had in the right circumstances. The fact that casting it more than once per day could cause permanent deafness would seem to indicate that casting this spell may cause the magic user to be deafened for 2 to 12 rounds. Like any other creature in the area of effect, things should be thought about by the DM before allowing it. I would also argue it could be used for non-combat things, for example, to shout out a message of some sort to somebody far away that needs to hear it. Of course, there's message and other better spells for that, but in a pinch, a good DM should be ready for players to use it for that. Next is Stone Skin. It has a special duration, a range of touch, and a casting time of 1 segment. When this spell is cast, the affected creature gains a virtual immunity to any attack by cut, blow, projectile, or the like. Thus, even a sword of sharpness would not affect a creature protected by stone skill, nor would a rock hurled by a giant, a snake strike, etc. However, magic attacks from such spells as Fireball, Magic Missile, Lightning Bolt, and so forth would have normal effect. Any attack or attack sequence from a single opponent dispels the Dwemer, although it makes the creature immune to that single attack or attack sequence. Attacks with relatively soft weapons such as a monk's hand and a Grillion's fist, etc., will inflict 1 to 2 points of damage on the attacker for each such attack, while the attacked creature is protected by the stone skin spell, but will not dispel the Dwemer. The material components of the spell are granite and diamond dust sprinkled on the recipient's skin. Essentially, this spell gives you protection from one weapon attack. That's it. Clearly, this is to be used in a scenario where the recipient of the spell will be fighting weaponless opponents who do not have tooth or claw as attacks. I will leave it to the DM to consider whether the claws of a ghoul or a similar undead creature will count as soft weapons. I would say no because they don't rely on impact but on the actual sharpness of the claws. Some people might rule otherwise for some creatures. I don't like this spell too much. I find it's protecting yourself against one attack is not all that interesting under most scenarios, so I'm not sure I'd be having my magic user characters memorize that spell all that often. Next is Ultravision, which has a range of touch, a duration of 6 turns plus 6 turns per level. It will affect one creature and has a casting time of 4 segments. By means of this spell, the magic user empowers the recipient to see radiation in the ultraviolet spectrum. In night condition, this means that vision will be clear as if it were daylight to a range of 100 yards and shadowy and indistinct from beyond 100 yards to about 300 yards distance. If the night is very dark with thick clouds overhead, reduction of ultravisual sight is 50%. Where more than about 6 feet of earth or 3 feet of stone interpose between the sky and the individual, such as in virtually any underground area, ultravision allows only vision of the dimmest sort in about a 3-foot radius, since the ultraviolet rays are screened out. Of course, if an emission source is nearby, the visual capabilities improve accordingly. Nearby light, including the radiance shed by magic items, tend to spoil ultravision, the brightness of the rays blinding the eyes to dimmer areas more distant. The material components for this spell is a crushed amethyst of at least 500 gold piece value. I like this spell. It's the kind of thing like the infravision spell allows humans or other humanoids who don't have infravision or ultravision to benefit from this, at least for 1 day. The big focus here is clearly outside at night in overland adventure rather than indoor adventures. What could be a source of ultraviolet lights if you're indoors in a D&D like setting will be up to the DM to decide, but certainly there aren't very many unless they're magical. So let's do a quick recap. This spell illusion is, I feel, quite nerfed for what it is, and I also feel that this spell magic could do the same job and is a 3rd level spell and has a greater range of uses, so would probably not be using that very much. Leomund's Secure Shelter, quite good. It's a much improved tiny hut. I like it more in some ways. Clearly something to be used during travel to have a secure shelter where you're unlikely to be able to find some, but a long casting time does mean it is for that very specific use. So instead of spending half an hour to an hour setting up camp, the party just keeps watch while the caster takes the 40 minutes to cast the thing. Then they can get in the shelter. Magic Mirror, such a classic trope. It's surprising it wasn't there before. It's a welcome addition. Odeluke's Resilient Sphere, a very interesting spell. I think lots of creative stuff could be done with it. Shout, I'm a bit ambivalent about. I'm not sure it is worth a 4th level spell slot. Stone Skin, I really don't like. It essentially protects you from an attack. You're better off getting the armor spell, which is 1st level. Ultravision, one of those great utility spells, particularly when you're doing outdoor adventuring, but I'm sure an imaginative player or DM might find sources of ultraviolet light. Certainly, this spell would be useful for any party entering the Vault of the Drow. The batting average isn't that high on this one, with only 4 really worthwhile spells, 2 on which I'm ambivalent, and a couple I really dislike. Nevertheless, the ones that are added that are good are pretty good. This has been the Grumpy Old Slan, looking at 4th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana.